Hi guys, it's Dan, and in this vlog we're going to be talking about how flexibility affects or impacts on strength. Okay, so I think flexibility as a whole, or mobility training, corrective exercise, kind of gets left out a lot of the time. We just kind of tend to just kind of pick up the weights or go running or jump on the treadmill without doing any flexibility training, and we really need to start doing more flexibility training because it's going to get much more. You're going to be able to get a lot more out of your workout, a lot more out of your performance, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that in a second. So if you guys are familiar with what I do, you know, I specialize in human movement science, corrective exercise. I'm also a soft tissue therapist, so I'm there to, when I see people, I'm trying to get people to move better, okay, to have better function, okay, and also to perform better, whether they're an athlete or semi-pro athlete, or if they just want to lift heavier, go beat PBs and break records. That's kind of what I do with the corrective exercise. Again, it's optimizing the motion, optimizing the function. And with the flexibility component, what we're going to be doing is, what the impact that's going to have rather on someone's strength is, if a muscle is in a shortened position, okay, it's technically weak. It can't produce as much force. The same as if a muscle is too long, okay, if a muscle's in a lengthened position, it also can't produce enough force, okay? So we have to optimize muscle length for us to be able to get the most out of our strength, okay? So if a muscle's at optimal length, they can produce the most amount of force. So again, this is why flexibility is very important. And if you want to get the most out of your training, most out of your workouts, or again, if you're an athlete and you're looking for that edge, looking for that performance enhancement, looking for that edge over other athletes, or even just for your team, just to help your team, win more games or perform better. Again, if we have that optimal length of a muscle, again, more force we can produce, and again, that's gonna really help. Again, or if you're like a bodybuilder, and you're trying to break records, break PBs, and lift heavier, again, having that muscle length in the right position is going to help you to produce more force. So again, we can't skip out on flexibility training. It's going to have a big impact on your success and also on your outcomes from your training. So how it kind of works, okay? So if you look at the muscle cell itself, kind of, if you had like we kind of zoom in on it. If you had like a microscope, that's what I'm trying to say. If you had like a very close up view, you've got different strands of proteins. Okay, so we're looking at the sarcomere. So the sarcomere is the contractile unit of the muscle. So muscles, remember, they contract and they relax. So for a muscle to contract and shorten, we have a big kind of thick protein strand called myosin, and we have these little protein strands that kind of circle it a bit like a honeycomb effect. You kind of got like the myosin in the middle, and you got these little actin filaments around it, these little thin filaments called actin. They kind of encircle it and wrap around, and they're kind of positioned around the myosin. And what happens is, when a muscle contracts, the myosin pulls on the actin. Okay, so it's kind of pulling from both sides. Okay, and it kind of brings that sarcomere closer together. And there's thousands of these sarcomeres all the way down the muscle, from where the muscle begins and where it ends. So from its origin insertion, it goes all the way across. So what happens there is, for the muscle to produce the most amount of force, it has to be optimal overlap. So the myosin pulls on those little actin filaments. It has these little heads that are attached to it. So there has to be enough. If they've got the most amount of we call them cross bridging. So those myosin heads go to the actin. We call that a cross bridge. So the more cross bridging that we have, the more force is produced. Okay. So again, that just carries on all the way down the muscle fiber. So if that muscle's at optimal length, we have the most amount of cross bridging. When that muscle contracts, the most force is produced. Now, if a muscle's in a shortened position, okay, so if we use my shoulder joint, for example, we tend to kind of get in this rounded position, okay, which I've kind of spoke about before in the upper body dysfunction. So we kind of get in this position here. I've got some muscles here, like my pec major right here is going to be in a shortened position. So in that position, again, that sarcomere is kind of in that kind of closed up position. There's going to be cross bridging, but there's nowhere for that to go. So when that myosin, when that big thick filament pulls on that actin, on those little filaments to contract. Well, it's already kind of in the shortened position. It doesn't really have anywhere else to go. It can't go any further, so not much force can be produced. It's a bit like if you had a load of rowers in a rowboat, okay, and again, you had nothing, there was no water to push on. Again, you're just kind of in a puddle. So again, you just couldn't go anywhere, or you was right up against like the end, right up against the bank. You can't go any further. You can't, there's nothing to kind of to pull on. So not much force can be produced. And that's kind of what happens if a muscle is in a shortened position. Again, it's technically weak because there's no room for it to contract. So again, if there's no room for it to contract, it can't produce much force. And on the other side, okay, so I've got like some of my rotator cuff muscles on the opposite side. Okay, that help to kind of keep my arms kind of from stopping from rotating in this way, and also some muscles like my trapezius muscle, which helps to kind of pull me back this way, keep me in this kind of upward position. They're going to be in a lengthened position. Now in this position, now there's not enough cross bridging. So as again, if you look at that rowboat analogy, it's like not having that many rowers in the boat. There's not that many oars in the water. So there's not much so we can't produce as much force. So if we don't have many oars in the water, we're not going to go very fast, or we can't produce much force. And that's kind of the same kind of thing that happens with the muscle fiber. So again, if it's in that lengthened position, it's also going to be weak. But if we optimize it, we do some mobility work, we release and stretch our short overactive muscles, which again would be my pec. And again, I do some activation work for my trapezius and I optimize that length, okay? Now I've got lots of cross bridging. And again, it's like having lots of rowers in the rowboat with lots of oars in the water, and I'm in water, I'm not in a puddle now. And again, I've got the whole distance to go. I've got space to produce force, and again, I've got lots of oars in the water, so lots of force can be produced. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I've got to thank my colleague David Bircher. He taught me that analogy, and I think it's wonderful. If you guys have any questions, you can email me. I can break it down a bit better for you, but hopefully it makes sense. But basically, we have actin and myosin. There are contractile proteins, and there's the cross bridging goes from the myosin and pulls on the actin. We just need as much cross bridging as possible for that muscle to produce optimal force. And for that to happen, the muscle has to be at optimal length. If it's too short, there's nowhere to go. It kind of has that internal resistance. Again, it's a bit like trying to use that oar to kind of push in a puddle. There's not enough water to actually generate force. And again, if it's too long, it's like not having enough oars in the water itself. Okay, so that you think about that, how that's going to affect your training. Again, if you're doing like a bench press and that pec major is in that shortened position, again, you now know that it's not going to be able to produce as much force as it could. So just doing some mobility work on your shoulder joint, you optimize the length of that pec major. Now, again, more cross bridging can occur there, the more force can be produced. Okay. Another example, guys, is like the glutes. We see this a lot. So again, if you remember when we did if you've seen the video where I did on lumbar pelvic hip and the low back, hip and knee dysfunction videos, where I said about things like the anterior pelvic tilt. So we kind of get in this tilted pelvis position here, okay? So we kind of get this kind of increase in arch in the lumbar spine, and also we get the knees kind of bowing in. They're all signs that the glutes are in a lengthened position. And again, if that glute is in a lengthened position, then there's not going to be as much cross bridging. So again, that glute is not going to be able to produce as much force. So if you have some of those signs like knees bow in and that anterior pelvic tilt, and you guys do things like a squat or a deadlift, you're not going to be able to get as much force to be produced from those glutes as possible, because it's in that lengthened position. In that lengthened position. So if we do some mobility work, we do some flexibility work, we get those hip flexors to calm down and we lengthen those out. We get those glutes to activate. We're kind of correcting that anterior pelvic tilt. We're correcting that knees bow in, getting those knees to be in line with the pelvis and the second and third toe. We get all that going. Those glutes are now in a better position. There's more cross bridging, okay? It has the room as well. It's not bunched up. There's more cross bridging now. There's more oars in the water, there's more rowers in the boat. Now it can produce a lot more force. Okay, and again, that could have big outcomes. You know, it could help with your strength and hypertrophy training, get us better gains, better improvements there. Again, if you're an athlete, again, if you're someone like a basketball player and you have an anterior pelvic tilt and knees bowing, think about how much force you could produce if you optimize that. You could jump higher, you could jump further. We could run faster, run quicker, change direction quicker. Also, again, if you're like a bodybuilder or a power athlete or like a power lifter, again, doing things like the deadlift or the squat, think about how that could impact your performance if you had that optimal length of the glutes and that optimal cross bridge. And again, it's going to be more force that's going to be produced. Okay, so there you guys go. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this vlog. So again, we need to give mobility or flexibility training a bit more love, I think. But think about it from this point of view. It's going to impact your outcomes. It's going to impact your performance. It's not just, oh, we just do flexibility because we need to be supple and we need to just be flexible for the sake of being flexible. No, that's not what we're doing. We do flexibility training to optimize motion, to optimize performance, you know, so we can increase our functional capacity. Again, it's not about being so flexible I can bend my arm over back of my head. There is something called hypermobility, which is just as bad or just as dangerous as being hypomobile. So hypomobile being inflexible, hypermobile being too flexible. So we just want optimal. The more optimal we are, again, more cross bridging occurs at those muscles, more force that we can produce, the more you're going to get out of your program, the more performance you're going to get out of your sport. So it's all good stuff. So again, let's do some more corrective exercise. Let's do more flexibility and mobility work and activation work. Let's do more of that stuff. Again, you guys can check out my videos that I've done on the lower leg and the low back, hip, knee, the lumbo-pelvic hip, and also the upper body dysfunction videos that go through all the signs of dysfunction. Yeah, try those out, see what happens, see what happens to your strength program, see if you can lift heavier, if you're a power athlete, see if you can jump further, jump higher. Look forward to hearing from your results. Again, just email me at danbryanfitness.com. Sorry, danbryanfitness@gmail.com, sorry. Any questions about anything, please let me know. But yeah, try those mobility programs or do some mobility and see what happens. See if you get an increase in performance, increase in strength. Look forward to hearing from you. Take care. See you soon.